Here on my YouTube channel, normally we talk about current events, things going on in South America, naval issues, that type of thing. Over on Patreon, we have a little bit of a different direction. We talk about psychological operations, how to identify them, whether you're the victim of one, but also how to resist them, how to understand your own mind, and how to affect white hat psychological operations in your life to make everyone around you more aware of what information warfare can do. One of the concepts we've talked about is cognitive dissonance. And the reason I'm talking about it here today on my YouTube channel is I wanted to cover something specifically going on right now in the media that I don't think a lot of people are seeing. And we're just going to do it in pictures. Now, this article on Pan American Post, talks about how Nicaragua perfectly exemplifies how socialism can only be maintained by force. Well, given the fact that in Venezuela we've seen since the election, which we would call that government socialist, almost no violence whatsoever. No protests, no huge demonstrations in the street against the man's re-election. And what we can see clearly is that the people that were doing that were coming from Colombia. And now that they've been ousted and they've been gotten rid of, that there is no violence. But even if that were the case, I'm no fan of Mr. Ortega here. If you make that assumption about socialism and you make that assumption about that Nicaragua, here's the cognitive dissonant moment. How long do you think this country would last without an IRS? Or the ATF, or the silent gun at your head, making you pay taxes, making you follow all of these onerous regulations that clearly violate the Constitution? It's a form of violence, because you know in 1 second, if you decided you wanted to go outside the law, whether it would be with weapons or with income, a very heavily armed wing of the Internal Revenue Service would basically destroy your life and more than likely the lives of those around you. And we've seen this when they do raids. I thought this was a funny picture because, I mean, this guy's going in and they're doing this raid in what looks like just a normal everyday shop, and the dude has freaking armor on like he's going into someplace in Iraq. And this thing with, you don't think you do this under the force of violence, under the force of a gun? Think again. What if they came out tomorrow and said, you know what, we're going to disarm the IRS, we're going to disarm the ATF, and we're going to rely on the decency of the American people to pay taxes willingly? What do you think would happen? That would be the end of this country, financially. There's no one in this country who, there might be a few, maybe not no one, but very few people in this country, and I think I can say this with full confidence, would voluntarily turn over more of their income than is already taken out in sales taxes and death taxes, and this wouldn't happen. They'd say, you know what, if I don't got to do it and I'm not going to go to jail to do it for not doing it, and no one's going to come to my house, I'm not doing it. They already take enough through other taxes, forget the income tax as is. I thought this was very relevant too, because it says here, if you can't, I'll see if I can zoom in, get a little better picture here. Starting in 1933, the data collected by the Weimar gun control law were used by the Nazis to disarm the Jews. Their eligibility was denied, their permits were revoked, their homes were scorched, and their weapons were seized. Because this is how it starts. It starts with just good common sense gun control laws where they start to put together data. And they start to figure out who you are, who your friends are, who your groups are, and they will find out where you live, where you have lived, and where you might be likely to live. And they will slowly begin the process of making your life miserable. You wait, the ammunition stuff's coming. because they've already got 10 states now with red flag laws, which, in case if anybody doesn't know what those are, we've covered those before, but I'll go over it for you real quick. The red flag laws state this: I can, if I want to, anonymously call my local police force and say, my neighbor Joe Smith, acting a little crazy out in his backyard. Him and his wife were having an argument, and I don't know, but I do know that he has guns, boy, and I just think that maybe there's a 1% chance he might be a danger to somebody. You just never know. That's all they need now. That's all they need. And with that statement, they don't need to go to a judge. They don't need to go to any mental health professional. The police can come, remand the man that I've reported, Mr. Joe Smith, and on top of remanding him, they can go in and seize his gun and hold them for up to a year. And he has to go through the process to get them back. That's what the red flag laws are. And we have 10 states in the union right now that have them passed, and we have 9 more considering them. This is another form of cognitive dissonance right here that I don't think a lot of these anti-gunners even can conceptualize in their head. And what got me thinking about this was this missile launch yesterday. This whole talk about the denuclearization. No one's talking about denuclearizing the United States. And if we're talking about the idea that we don't think, that when we say we, if the left is talking about the idea of one person with one rifle with 30 rounds being too much of a danger for society, who do you think is sitting behind those consoles ready to launch these weapons from submarines and from silos and from all of the other places we have nuclear weapons? They're human beings that have bad days, that make mistakes. And I know, like, oh, there's all sorts of safeguards. Well, there's supposed to be all sorts of safeguards with weapons too, with not allowing people with mental problems to get weapons, but it happens. They say you can't have grenades and you can't have tanks and all this stuff, and I suppose that excuse me, makes sense. But when you look at this, it's an amazing study in cognitive dissonance. When you see something silly and ridiculous like this little tiny country, Nicaragua, and you see them as this huge threat, but you don't recognize this as a threat. A simple clerical organization designed to keep track of the finances and the income of this country has more weapons than a lot of little countries do, has more armed personnel and more rounds in storage ready to go than some countries do. It's cognitive dissonance on display that we live under threat of violence every single day in this country, simply just to maintain the flow of money. So if you say socialism always requires violence, what about our situation? I thought I'd leave it, excuse me, rough day here in Florida, for allergies. It's clear to me, it's clear to anyone who has an open mind, that not very much has changed in the last 2 years. I've refrained from trying to illuminate that psychological operation about what was expected versus what's actually happened. But we'll save that for the Patreon channel, and we'll cover that at a higher level. So we'd like to have you. If you would like to join us to understand psychological operations, we have 5 different levels of it. I think it would be of a great benefit. And the more soldiers we can have in the Maquis, the better. So I will leave that there. And I will also say this: I do not know how exactly my channel has avoided the demonetization apocalypse. I have theories. I have some ideas about what might be, but I don't know anybody at Google or YouTube. I just do all of my videos one way. But I've been greatly blessed. So what I have decided to do is a giant portion of the funds that I get on the Patreon channel, I am using to support channels on Patreon that have been demonetized here on YouTube. And I have 7 different channels right now that I support at a fairly high level, and these are channels you would know. Very, very big names that make my little 20,000 subs look like nothing. So I refrain from giving those names out publicly because the last time I did that, one of the people got threatened for having any association with me because, it's no secret that I don't have any particular support for the current administration or what I have had for the person that was the other option that people see as only 2 options when we had 4, but that's another video for another day. So like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much, everyone. The support has been humbling. Greatly appreciate it. And we will see you next time. Thank you.